How are you?
Good.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what I want to start with is, I want to start with you, Zach. How big of a role was music for you before your wife had that accident?
It's a good question. I think, music was always just a comforting thing for me. It always felt like home. I grew up listening to mostly older music in my parents' house. But actually singing and playing I didn't do at all before that accident. So that's really all there is to it. That was a terrible answer, sorry.
No, but what was the music that you listened to? Was that along the lines of what you are making now?
Yeah, the music that I grew up listening to was like Creedence Clearwater Revival, Otis Redding, and then a lot of country music like Dolly Parton and stuff like that. And then on into the 90s, I was a pretty big fan of like Boyz II Men, Mariah Carey, Whitney Houston, Jagged Edge.
Okay. But so when people urge you, because, well, I suppose you've told this story many times, so I won't ask it again, but people urged you to write down what you were experiencing and then to sing it as well. So did you know you could sing?
I knew that I could hold a tune. Brian was actually the first one that like encouraged me to try to sing in front of people. We were both like 18 or 19 years old. But no, I didn't know that I could like sing in a way where like it wouldn't hurt people's ears if they heard me sing, you know? So.
Didn't you get kicked out of the choir?
I got kicked out of a choir when I was in middle school because I sang too loud. And I was obnoxious, which doesn't help in a choir situation.
But so Brian, did you knew you could sing at that point? When you told him, well, maybe you should try it?
Well, yeah, he just, he was a shower singer, car singer, but we just had a bunch of guys in college that we just like wrote songs together and played and didn't take it seriously at all. And sometimes we would bring Zach to lead a song, and we would have like a little concert or whatever. And so, none of us took it that seriously until, a couple years later. But yeah, you could always hold a tune. I think we went on tour like 2 years after that. It wasn't really a tour. We just kind of like played wherever we could. Or we had family members.
Pizza houses.
But we covered Aretha Franklin in her key on that tour, and that's when I was like, okay, he can do it.
And was this, Kanene, was this when you were living in China? Was it around that time?
When y'all were in college, I think I was still in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they had both moved to New York, I guess, and I was still living in China. And first time I sang with Zach, my older brother, who he went to school with, invited us both to sing at his wedding. So I came home from China to sing at the wedding and met Zach, and we sang together. And I remember you wrote me a sweet MySpace message. And it was like, hey, we should sing together. And I was like, I live in China. Can't really make that happen right now. But then a couple years later, my husband and I moved to New York and just kind of fell in. Yeah.
So when she came to New York, was it kind of set for you that you wanted to make music together, or did that come after?
That came after, but really shortly after. Brian and I had our own separate bands in New York. We had been playing the bar scenes for like 6 or 7 years there, and he was in Nashville before that with his own band. And I was in a band where everybody that I was in the band with were just like hired guys, and it wasn't that much fun. after a few years doing it. So I wanted to put together something where there was more like ownership and collaboration, and I called up Brian and asked him if he just wanted to like put a little rehearsal together, and written some new songs, and he's always up for stuff like that. He was like, yeah, man. And we got like 6 or 7 of our neighbors together, and that really ended up being the first rehearsal of the band. And then probably a couple weeks later, I was playing one of my shows, and I was really at the end of wanting to play my own shows. And I think I just invited these two up on stage to sing one of the new songs, the song called You Can Be All Kinds of Emotional. And they got up and sang, and it was just like, this is fun. So that was kind of how it melded together in my mind.
Did it change your songwriting? Because you say, well, you were doing that solo thing and you had hired guns next to you. So
Yeah.
did it change when you had a more collaborative?
I think it didn't change. I just am still in the process of learning. There's like 2 different like ways of songwriting that I am finding out that I enjoy. And one way is just like, by myself. And the other way is with people. And I think we're all kind of learning the ebb and flow of like what songs should be a collaboration, what songs should just be this one person's tune, like this and that. And it's an ongoing journey, that just like creating, you know how it is, it's beautiful.
Was it easier on the second album than the first?
It was different because the first album I had written a lot of the songs. And the second album, collaboration was more important because we saw ourselves more as a band. Because we made the first album 2 years before we ever went on a tour. So it was really just like a group of friends, just like hanging out. So that came along with some challenges, but also I think we learned a lot. I think that we're finally like honing in the freedom of it on this writing for this third album, where like it's not as intense. There's not as much like identity wrapped up in your work. It's a little more like just chill and like creative and fun, and yeah, it's been like a really nice time.
And then for you two as well, did it add something to what you were doing musically to form a band? Was that something you were looking for?
Well, I mean, I think Zach will say the same thing. Like when we played together and sang together, especially, it was better. It was better than what we were doing, and it was also like it felt like, like we're really good friends. First, have been since the beginning. It felt like just we were doing something special with a group of people that we want to work with, live life with, all that. So, for me, that was like the best part about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wasn't looking to do music at all. Moved from China to New York to go to school and to eventually move back to China. But when we started the band, probably less than a year in, had to make a decision on what to focus on and finish school, but then just decided to take a pretty crazy detour and just do this. And it worked out.